Hey you, and welcome back to the Mood Lab podcast. I am so excited to share this week's episode with you. I am Carina Jung, your host, and if you don't know me yet, I'm so happy that you're here. I hope you'll get to know me over time. And I think the best way to get to know me is in my solo episodes. But this week, I'm coming at you with a conversation that I had with Adam Allred. And I'm so excited to share that one with you. It was just such a beautiful and wholesome conversation. And Adam is just such a great guy. So I'm really, really lucky that I got to talk to him and to get to share this episode with you. And just to give you a bit of a background on what we talked about and who Adam is in a way, he'll introduce himself anyway, so don't you worry. But Adam talks online a lot about the relationship between men and women and the attack on the masculine, the attack on men. And he supports very traditional views, which I love. So we definitely hit it off right away. Loved talking to each other. And it's always so refreshing to have someone sitting opposite of you, someone who has similar perspectives and a heart for a more traditional way of living. And I mean, sometimes I feel like traditional doesn't even give it justice because I do believe it's just a natural way of living, the way of how the roles of the masculine and the feminine and men and women function the best, and how in this way we can come together and just flourish and feel nourished and feel protected as women as well. And yeah, just have a thriving life and a thriving relationship. I think these are such important factors, so I'm really excited to share this episode with you. We talk about the attack on men, we talk about how men have become weakened and damaged by how society functions nowadays. We talk about the main causes of why that happened and why that is so, and what we can do against that, or what we can do personally to just change that for ourselves and in our immediate environment. We also talk why a more traditional way of living might be serving us, why it actually helps us, makes us more fulfilled, etc. And also why people backfire against it, and what we can do to shift our personal perspective to just feel more solid in our views and our viewpoints and also our convictions towards that. I do feel like, especially as women, when we say that we actually kind of want to stay at home and we would love to be more of a homemaker, it is often that people come against us and they're saying, you should earn your own money, be careful, your husband might leave you. And so we're talking about all of these factors and why actually going into marriage with that thought pattern is already kind of backwards. So if you have a heart for marriage, if you have a heart for a more traditional way of living, and also to restore the role of women and to restore the role of men, then this podcast is perfect for you. We have such a beautiful conversation around all of that. So I'm really excited to share all of that with you. And before we dive in, I just wanted to give you a couple of pointers and a couple of announcements. So if you are a listener and you love this podcast, please hit the subscribe button and leave 5 stars if you like this podcast. If you don't like this podcast, please just don't leave anything because obviously it helps this podcast to grow if there's more 5-star reviews and obviously more subscriptions. And that just helps this podcast to be seen, which just would be incredible because I feel like this is such an important subject. And if I had had the opportunity to listen to something like this when I was around 20 years old, I would have been highly grateful because I definitely already had a more traditional heart. So having this kind of perspective would have just been so helpful because the perspectives that I was surrounded by definitely were very different to my disposition. And so I tried to adapt to these other people. They were living in, I would say, in a not so great way because it was actually kind of harmful and not supporting my safety and the safety of my heart as well. So I would have really truly appreciated having this kind of perspective. Also thinking about that I already had a heart for marriage, etc. And I had a lot of voices around me telling me that marriage wasn't possible anymore and that I would at least have several partners. So I would have just really appreciated to have someone speaking out there and speaking right in front of me, talking about how it might actually be possible and how I could still believe in that and how I could still pray for that. So I just want to be that voice and want to give that space for people to have this kind of encouragement have this kind of perspective. And yeah, so I think these are the most important things. There's one more announcement that I want to make, because the Mood Lab just partnered up with the Courtship Network, and it is a dating platform that ditches the hookup culture that we have going on all the other platforms and just in general. And it is for marriage. So it is a courting network in a way. You don't have to swipe through people. So you're not looking for, okay, what is next? What is next? What is next? No, you just see all the people that are on there and you can just connect with each other and get into a conversation. And the great thing is, all the people on there are screened. So you have all the people with more traditional mindsets. Most of them are Christians, actually. And people are on there to get married and to create families. And it's just so beautiful. I just love that this exists. It's been around for a bit more than a year. There have already been a couple of amazing stories of people getting married and people dating right now and courting, etc. And so that is just so wonderful. And I'm so excited. I'm on there as well, just to say it is amazing. I've been checking it out and just having a look at it so that I'm recommending something incredible. And so far, I would say it is. So I recommend you to hop on there and to check it out and see if this is for you. I'm going to leave my link in the description box so that you can actually sign up, because it only works through those referral links. And so you can use mine to apply and get started to date, get into a relationship, get married, build a family, and serve God's kingdom. Hallelujah. It's incredible. I love it. So I'm really excited to be partnering and to have this great opportunity here for you and to be able to speak about that. And also, it just aligns so well with this podcast, with this particular conversation, because if you love this conversation, you're the right person to hop on this network. So just leaving that there. And without further ado, let's jump into the episode and Adam will introduce himself. First of all, welcome, Adam, to the Mood Lab. I would love if you could start with you introducing yourself so that everybody gets to know you.
Yeah, sure. Hey, and I'm really, really glad to be here, Carina. Thanks for having me on your podcast. So I was born in Utah, and my old man was in the military, so I traveled around my whole life growing up. So I didn't grow up here. I'm in Utah currently, but I didn't grow up here. Grew up all over the world, and eventually I came back here for college to get got an English degree at Weber State University. It took me 7 years. I was telling you earlier that I'm not very smart. It took me 7 years to get a 4-year degree. But that's just mostly because me and my buddies were backpacking around the world and skipping school. And
yeah, that's a valid point.
It was fun. I loved college for a lot of reasons. I wasn't ever somebody I've never been super interested in formal education. I've been much more passionate about self-education, going out and learning things for myself and reading the books I wanted to read and writing the things I wanted to write. But I ended up getting into a career in door-to-door sales. I was knocking doors in the summertime. There's this weird little niche industry in Utah where these kids go on Mormon missions and they come back having knocked doors for 2 years as Mormon missionaries. And so they figured out how to monetize their skill set to go out and knock doors and sell stuff. And I did that. I got back from a Mormon mission, went to school, got recruited in the summers to go out and sell for various companies, various services all over the United States, which was a really cool experience because I got to see a lot of parts of the country. I got to develop a lot of skills and abilities, and it was phenomenal money. I was making really good money in the summertime, and when I got done with my when I got done with my degree, I started a company in door-to-door sales, and I've started a lot of them since then. Kind of using that as our main marketing strategy is to send our sales guys out there and knock doors, and so I do mostly pest control and garbage. They're not very sexy, but they pay they pay the bills. There's a lot of money in those industries, and so that's been predominantly what my career has been. And along the way, in door-to-door sales, it's a really interesting culture because it's like the hardest thing these kids will ever do with their lives is go out and knock doors. It was for me at the time. That was the hardest thing I'd ever done. But it's also a really high energy, highly motivated environment where you get lots of training and you get lots of development, and it feels more like you're on a sports team rather than actually going to a job, because you rally up to go face the day, go out and knock all day, and then you come back and report back. And that culture has been really meaningful to me, and it's shaped my life in so many ways that have been beneficial. And so that's the whole social media thing that I've been doing, which is how you and I connected, is through social media. But I just started taking that culture broader to men in general, because I've just seen so many guys over the years that they have no connection with friends. They have no connection with any kind of like high energy culture. They don't have mentors. A lot of these guys are living in dead end jobs. They're in difficult relationships. If they haven't already been devastated by a divorce, a lot of times they're just drowning in quiet desperation, as Thoreau said. And so I just started talking about that kind of journey, and it's resonated with a
Yeah.
lot of people, which has been encouraging and cool. It's been really cool.
Yeah, it's so cool to see. I mean, there's definitely some sort of pandemic out there of people being alone, being lonely, not connecting. I feel like that's especially visible when you're on social media, because you kind of get the idea that people just seem to spend their days on there and don't do anything else, obviously. And I feel like what I see from your content, at least, that you definitely have that aspect of, okay, we need to also gather in person to like connect in person, and we need to strengthen each other so that we actually have these human connections. And like, even like going back to your door-to-door sales, basically, that is like something that is so like, you're not just sitting behind the screen trying to figure something out, but you're like going out there and you need to charm the person that you're in front of in order to sell them whatever they might need. I mean, even if it's like something that's not very nice to have, or not everyone wants to have or knows that they need it. I think there's definitely some connection there, as you also said. So I think that's a really cool journey to have. And you, on your social media, you, and yeah, and everything that you do online, you talk a lot, and also offline, obviously, you talk a lot to men. Women aren't really your predominant target group, I think, at least, but there's definitely something in there as well. I always feel, I don't know why, but I also enjoy content that is targeted towards men, because I just feel like it helps me to understand men better and hopefully prepare me one day to, yeah, have a flourishing marriage and all of the things that I wish for my life. That's something why that draws me in. And also, I don't know, maybe sometimes in conversations that one has with guy friends or brothers or something like that, to just be able to say more of the right things or to be more aware of like what they're going through. And I think that's why I find it always very helpful and interesting. And yeah, I would just love if we could jump in with talking a bit about what we've been doing to men. And I mean, it's kind of obvious by now when you look at like mainstream media that there's something wrong there. And I would just love to explore a bit like how we've weakened and damaged men, and yeah, what's going on there. I would just like, yeah, just dive us in there and get us started.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a lot. It's a pretty heavy subject. It is something that I try and tackle a lot on my social media. And it's
Yeah.
also interesting, to your point earlier, when I first started just posting actually content for the sake of sending out a message, not just
Yeah.
personal pictures of family and stuff, uh, I had like 1,500 followers. Now it's like 10 months later and I've got about 115 or 16,000 right now.
Yeah.
A large percentage of that is women, which
Yeah.
is very surprising because I am a guy just talking to other guys about guy stuff. And a lot of those topics involve women, me talking to men about women and how to manage that to, the best of my abilities, what my experiences have been. I get like kind of three different types of women that show up to watch this content. There's a group of women that are just absolutely supportive, which is awesome. I have like these women that comment on every one of my posts, and it's just gas. Like they're just pumping up the men, and really they see things probably similar to how you're phrasing that question, that there's a real attack on men. And
Yeah.
that support from women has been awesome to see. Like I've really appreciated it. I'm actually surprised by it, to be honest with you, because again, I thought just dudes would be interested in this. And I haven't really tried to talk to women about anything. I'm a dude, and I don't feel like I have any ability to tell women what to do.
Yeah.
But then I get another group of women that come. They're just curious. They just want to hear what dudes are talking about. And then another group of women come just to be like, "No, that's not right," and just tell me I'm wrong and correct everything that I'm saying. And all comments, all characters are welcome. I love having good discussion. I love having
Yeah.
different points of view and disagreement. But to your question, I think first to just start off, like my perspective is that what is happening to men is not some sort of organic pendulum swing that just kind of happens naturally in society. I feel like what's happening is a concerted attack on masculinity and on men in general. And it's been multifaceted and it's been going on for decades. And I think it's because the forces that are in power are very much motivated, speaking particularly of the government and of big corporations, they're very much motivated to keep people divided and to
Yeah.
break down who we are, our roles, our identities, to keep us confused. And because it feeds their power. If we're confused and if we're divided, it's easy for them to take more and more control of society. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. And if men are weak, society is weak, frankly. And I see this happen all the time. And so it makes sense to me what's happening. And I'm
Yeah.
trying, along with a lot of other guys. I mean, as I've been on this journey for just this last year, it's been really encouraging and hopeful to see how many people, not just men, but women as well, that are waking up to this. And we're breaking out of the programming and unshackling ourselves of this tyranny that I feel like is taking place right now worldwide. So with men, I mean, one of the things that you see is that there's just been a breakdown, obviously, of traditional families, which has been a huge problem for men. So you have what generally happens in the United States if there's a divorce, which there's a high percentage of divorces now, is that the children almost always go to the mother, and
Yeah.
fathers will have some visiting rights. Maybe in my case, I went through a divorce a few years ago and I have 50-50 custody with my kids. It was the only thing I was going to fight my ex-wife on. I was like, you can have anything else that you want, but I'm not going to I'll fight you for 50-50 custody. I didn't know if I'd win or not. Fortunately, she was willing to just compromise on that. So I have my kids half the time, but a lot of my friends, a lot of the people that I talk to on social media, I see don't. They get just
Yeah.
little visiting rights with their kids. And as a boy, a mom cannot teach a boy to be a man. She just can't do it. She can, and I have all the respect for single mothers out there doing their best. So I say this with all due respect. I think single women, single mothers, um, are heroes, and I really have a lot of love and respect for them. But they cannot teach boys how to be men. And what you have is these boys that are growing up with mothers, single moms often, and they go into a school system that's predominantly women, and they come out of this their education and out of their upbringing having no idea what it means to be a man, oftentimes not having any mentors. Some of these kids, when they do have mentors, it comes through things like sports or something like that, where they have coaches that help them, but they don't have any idea what it even means to take on the role of being a man. And so they come out as boys, and then it seems like they're looking for a woman in their life, or women, to basically fill the role of their mother, because they're looking for someone to take care of them, someone
Yeah.
to just, basically be that motherly figure, which is a horrible situation, not just for boys, but for women as well. Like nobody's happy because of this, and I,
Yeah.
and I get pushback from feminists on a lot of my content. But one thing I've noticed about universally about almost every feminist that I've ever talked to that I knew was a feminist is they're not happy. They're usually like angry women. So
Yeah.
it's not working for them. Whatever it is that
No, it's
they're
not.
doing, it's not making their lives better or happier. And so
No.
I think this is probably the biggest issue that we have right now is boys just having no mentors, and then they roll into these relationships where they have mothers as their partner. It's not really a partnership, and they're isolated from friends, so they don't even have groups of guys to gather around to kind of
Yeah.
share the load with or their burden with. And so you have these guys that are isolated, living in this feminine energy, and we're just seeing the consequences of it across the board. I think everything in our society that's bad right now, that's really going down the toilet, so to speak, in some way, directly or indirectly, comes from the weakening of men.
Yeah. I mean, there's also there to add to that, there's also fatherlessness because of men just being out of the house constantly. I feel like when we look back in history, that's not really been the case. Like at least you would work in some sort of like in a family unit, for example. I mean, this is like way back. But right now, like at least what I experienced around where I grew up in, like the environment that I grew up in, that men were just not there. Like they were not even in the picture, even though they were still married to their counterpart, basically, but they were just not present. And so even then, like all the raising and educating and everything was also done by women. And then I feel like I like grew up in this like crazy wave of feminism. I think it's like probably like a second or third wave or something like that, where it's just been literally do everything by yourself. I was literally indoctrinated like that from every side. It's like, do everything by yourself. Don't be reliant on any men. Have your solid job that you can work throughout your whole marriage, so that when your man leaves you, which is already like, it's already programmed that this will happen. And so you need to be able to work for yourself
Yeah,
and bring in the
you're already
money.
manifesting the divorce. You're already
Yeah, it's
manifesting a
like,
separation. It's like,
it's
yeah,
all already there and it's still happening. Like because I'm very traditionally minded, and when I talk to someone and I tell them like, no, I actually want to be at home, and yeah, I want to do like my creative things, and I want to be able to be like free with that for sure, because obviously I have aspirations and I'm inspired and a creative person, but I don't really need to climb up any like career ladder, etc. And I've already done that, and it didn't work out the way that I thought it would. It didn't give me the fulfillment and the, I don't know, the feeling that I thought I was seeking, and it didn't do anything for me basically. So it was basically just me being presented with the lie that I was fed of like, well, now you got the position, you're leading a team, you're earning so much money, and you feel miserable. And that's like just showing, and I mean, it just connects to so many things. That's like a whole other bucket, probably, but it connects to all the things that when you're like female and your biology is female, your nervous system cannot handle all the stuff that we think we are supposed to do because we were told to be doing all of those things. And at some point, at least for me, and also for a lot of women that I'm surrounded by these days, this feeling is instilled and like comes out that, oh no, this is actually not the path that I want to take. And I wish someone would have told me this sooner, because now I'm like coming towards 30, but actually my whole life I didn't even like go in the direction of even seeking for a husband or like creating a life that actually fits in a family. No, we've been pushed to go for a career instead of going for a family. And I think that's like super alarming to look at in society right now.
so there's so many things I want to respond to that. First off, it's so refreshing to me to find, and there's a lot of them. So it just seems like the kind of the minority gets to make the noise. And but
Yeah.
it's so refreshing to me to find women with your perspective. Traditional women want to have traditional values because it just feels healthy. It feels right.
Yeah.
To your point about the separation of fathers from their sons, even when they're in the home, I think it kind of starts with the Industrial Revolution and how
Yeah.
fathers ended up leaving the home to go work, 9 or 10 hours a day or 12 hours a day. It's oftentimes working on the weekend. So even if they're in the home, even if it's a home that's, has two parents, the father's usually quite absent. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, you have these guys growing up. When I grew up, my dad was in the military. He worked a lot, and I didn't spend a lot of time with him either. I didn't get a lot of mentorship. Still, his presence abided, and it was something that he was a great dad in a lot of ways. But I didn't have a lot of connection with him growing up because of that. I think just because that's kind of the norm and the kind of the expectation as the father leaves. Where it used to be like you would take your son to learn your trade with you. If you were a
Yeah.
farmer, your son was farming with you. If you were a carpenter, you were teaching your son how to be a carpenter. If you were an electrician, you were taking your son with you to be an electrician. And there was that whole process of developing the boy into the man through that's largely absent. And I think again that has huge problems for what's happening in society. It's interesting to me that, and this is something I travel quite a bit. I go to a lot of different cultures, and I hate that
Yeah.
we've created a narrative from the West that happiness and success comes from material possessions, because it doesn't. I go to a lot of these countries. I was in Africa 2 years ago. I was in Nepal last year, and I was out in India a couple of years before that. And they're very traditional societies. And when I go there, I find people that are not only healthy and happy, but they seem like they're full of light. Even though
Yeah.
they may not have the material possessions that people have in the West, they have a much higher quality of life, a much closer community and a connection with each other, not just in the family, but within their immediate community as well. It's makes me want to leave the United
Yeah.
States
They always
sometimes.
all know each other. It's so fascinating to me. I was in Sri Lanka 2 years ago, and I mean, they live in circumstances that are like, people, when you come back to Germany or to Lisbon or somewhere else, people cannot even imagine how they live. And still they're like super happy, so joyful, so welcoming, so grateful, and they know everyone. And they're just like one big family. It's so fascinating to me.
Yeah, it's happiness is not materialism at all.
No.
We've painted it that way, but it's
Yeah.
not. It's really having connections with people, because in these societies largely, and I've asked a lot of questions, and I talk to people when I'm there. Depression and anxiety are almost non-existent. They don't
Yeah.
have big pharma like prescribing kids antidepressants. They don't have people that have been on pharmaceutical drugs their whole lives. It just doesn't exist because they have the community, they have the connection with one another. And as part of the messaging that I share on social media is a lot of like what you said earlier about trying to gather people, especially men, to create groups and have that kind of connection again, because it's just so healthy. It's so much more, in my opinion, so much more valuable and efficacious than therapy. It's just
Yeah.
having people that you're connected with, that you can share your story and your journey with. But going back to the idea that this is just being pushed by so many women to get women out of the house and get women buying into what you described as a lie, because it's a lie to me too. It's a lie when I just read a poll recently. 84% of women in the workforce want to stay home now. It's like they're trying it out, like you said. They're like, this isn't that great. Like, what am I doing? Like, why do we change this up? So
Yeah.
84% of women are not happy being in the workplace. And I have an incredible career. I feel really, really fortunate with the things I've been able to do. I own my own businesses. It gives me a lot of freedom. It gives me a lot of fulfillment as a man. That's important. But even so, even with a really incredible career with incredible people that I work with, it pales in comparison to the joy and happiness that I get from being at home. I would rather
Yeah.
be at home more. It's just so much more fulfilling, those relationships and those connections with the people that mean most to you. So this idea that a woman is going to be fulfilled and happy if she divests herself of traditional values of the family, of having children, to go into the workforce and trade her divine birthright for a mess of pottage, to go into the workforce and be a W-2 employee that's going to get laid off when they can find somebody, or when
Yeah.
AI comes along and can do it cheaper. She can take orders from her boss, but she can't listen to her husband at all. Like, that's off the table. It's just such a circus to me, to be honest with
Yeah.
you.
And it's crazy, like how it just blows my mind how women, to some extent, and well, actually to a big part in like the mainstream media that is out there, are still fighting for their rights in those workplaces and to be like to level up, to get the higher position, etc. And just thinking like exactly what you just said, that your boss can like let you go any moment and doesn't need to care about you, and you don't have any benefit. You didn't work on anything that belongs to you. And how much better is it to actually be able to work for your family in maybe in the home or like in your community in a way, serve your community and actually have a real outcome and a fulfillment, first of all, like within, because it is just way more fulfilling. And also you see the fruits of what you're sowing, because literally what you're doing in your family home, you see maybe your children growing up or your home becoming more beautiful or more inviting, etc. So it's just like it's not even like comparable in a way, and it's
Not even
beyond me that,
close.
yeah, and it's beyond me that we've been sold that this is the way to go and that is supposed to be so much better and so much
And
more
you
fulfilling.
And you see people doing that. It's like they have to force themselves to tell themselves they're happy. They got to get
Yeah.
really loud. I was like, no, I'm happy. This is great for me. And you can just tell they're not in a healthy place.
Yeah,
And to each their
depressed,
own.
taking
To,
medication, needing all the like breath work and yoga sessions they can find to like, I mean, we see a huge rise in all of those things to like balance life, right? So that's something to think about, at least. That just seems to be something that wasn't really necessary before.
if you judge things by the fruits, which is what we learn in the scriptures to do, Jesus
Yeah.
admonishes us to judge things by their fruits, which is just so obvious, but yet we miss that so much in society. It's deeply profound. You can tell that what we are doing in Western society isn't working if we're judging
Yeah.
it by the fruits. This watering down, this confusion of roles, this watering down of masculinity, this
Yeah.
breakdown of the traditional family is not making anybody happier. Um,
Yeah.
it's not making anybody more fulfilled or healthier. So yeah, it's a real problem. And I think it starts with us, like right here, just this kind of stuff, just talking about it and getting more and more people to kind of wake up out
Yeah.
of that and see things as they really are, kind of start to become more and more self-aware and less programmed by the loud voices in media and government and society and Hollywood that are pushing this agenda on us. Again, I don't think it's accidental. I don't think it's organic. I think this is a very contrived effort to try and break us apart and separate us for control and for manipulation.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like that. I have no idea. I feel like I always feel also very far removed from everything that seems to be happening outside of like an immediate environment. But there's definitely something going on, and it trickles down. And so I think for me personally, I always find it so important to start exactly in the environment that I can have an impact in, and that I can make a difference in the conversations that I'm having, or the people that I'm able to reach, or just being a listening ear as well. Because I mean, so many people are struggling, and it's just so important to listen. And yeah, maybe something that they then hear, or even just because they were listened to, something can change. And I think that's super, super healthy and important to have that. And yeah, having that also with like for men as well, because I think that's something that we're really missing. I think women have a tendency just by their nature to like gather more and to just be more outwardly, well, outspoken in a way, just sharing all our emotions. And like also when we feel like we have something to complain about or are frustrated about, we are immediately gathering our whole tribe and circle and start chatting about it, and we make it a whole thing. And I think men are doing this less, at least from what I'm experiencing. I know maybe you can talk about this a bit in terms of what do you think, or what are you doing in your environment that men can do to build up groups that lift them up and also helps to create like a more healthy environment in a way.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing that you have to do as a man is you have to develop friendships. I mean, one of the things I actually listened to a couple of people talk about this recently, that the speculation for why men tend to die earlier than women is because they don't
Yeah.
have any friends, and women do have friends. And so men, their friendship groups, largely their social circles are at work, right? Because that's where they spend the majority of their time. And so when they retire, they don't have that circle of friends anymore. And so uh, it it just has a lot of emotional and mental consequences when you don't have that type of group. So the first thing I tell men always is like it starts with you, right? Like if you are not in a position where you're leveling up, getting
Yeah.
better at various aspects of what it means to be a man, it's hard for you to ever have a group of friends around you that are going to help you do that, because you attract what you are, not what you want. You can say all day what you want, but you're going to get at the end of the day exactly what you really are. And so I tell men at first, just start by taking ownership of your day, recognizing that where you're at doesn't have to stay that way. And I think a lot of men think that's just how it is. And they're in this state
Yeah.
of hopelessness. And you have all these people tell them, no, you're fine just the way you are. Or society tell them, this is your role as a man now. This is what you're supposed to do. Just shut up. We don't want to hear from you anymore. You know, and to break out of that and recognize that you can change your circumstances, but it starts with you first taking ownership of your life. First thing I tell men to do is get up in the morning early. Pick a time that you're going to get up and give yourself a few hours to prime the day. Tony Robbins talks about priming and meditation. I use priming and to meditate with my morning, but that includes physical fitness, working out. That includes um, prayer, meditation for me. That includes listening to or reading good books in the morning, listening to good podcasts when I'm at the gym working out, getting myself mentally and emotionally and physically in fighting shape for the day. And then when you go into these different areas of your life, whether that's going to the gym or going to work, or if you're on a sports team, or you're, interacting with other parents at, community activities and stuff, and you start to make connections there. And there are so many men that don't have friends. And so if you're a guy that wants to have friends, you're going to find a lot of other guys out there that want to have friends too, if you're willing to be a little proactive about it. But it's almost impossible for guys to do that until they first start taking ownership of their life, until they
Yeah.
first like really, and that starts actually the beginning of that is really deciding what is it that you want out of life. What is it that you want your life to look like? If you could wave a magic wand, what would that be? Who would you be and what would that look like?
Mm.
And then setting really small goals, little tiny steps to start moving in that direction. And you do that for a year, you do that for 2 years, you do that for 3 years, you do that for 5 years, and suddenly you are in a completely different place than you were when you started. And I've seen this happen in a lot of guys' lives. It certainly has been a process in my own life. And so that's what I encourage guys to do is like make yourself the best version of yourself. And along the way, grab some friends and some homies to come along with you. And uh, you're going to have a much higher quality of life if you're willing to do that, kind of put yourself out there and start putting in some of the work and the effort to change your life for the better.
Yeah, I feel like this really resonates with something that I've been noticing, at least in like the communities and around the people that I spent most of my time with. I feel like with men, what I see a lot is a little less commitment in terms of, well, if I'll show up, I'll show up. If I don't, I don't. And if this is something that happens between men, I mean, even like mixed groups, but also then just men by themselves, then obviously that's not something that's like reliable ground to build up relationships on. So I think even just like these, like you just said, there's like the bar is very low. So if you create a sort of commitment between each other and you check in with each other on a regular, you can probably easily create really cool friendships that lift each other up and that help you through day-to-day life. And just being able to have a group of people where you can communicate your struggles to and what you're going through and what you're experiencing, I think that's something super healthy to have around for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. I would love to dive a bit into, well, go back for a second, back into like the more traditional way of living. We touched upon it already a bit here and there, but I feel like there's so much backlash against that. I mean, there's a whole, at least online, where I always like consume those things and see those things the most. There's a whole like industry almost by now where women show off and men also their traditional way of living. So like especially obviously Americans and Australians with like big farmland, there's something going on there. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, we're like homesteading and I'm like this housewife who does a nice bread and whatever. So it's almost like these advertisements from back in the day. And just people seem to be craving that. And it's there and everyone wants to watch it. Not everyone, but like a certain group of people wants to watch it and like loves consuming that content because it like resonates and it just like fills a little something within us. But then there's also obviously a huge backlash going on in terms of, well, people really firing against that, being like, this is not where we want to go. We already talked about this, like people still wanting to obviously having like their high positioning, etc. So there's like still everything there. I don't know, what is your view on like why is like a more traditional living between men and women? It's also obviously certain roles that come with that, which people don't want to hear about. Yeah, why is that so good for us? Or it could potentially serve us.
Well, I think it's because we come down already pre-programmed with specific roles and with,
Yeah.
I mean, just for example, like if you get down to the real basics, there's like two fundamental roles that humans have as a species, and that's to survive and procreate, and raise and prepare the next generation. I mean, that's kind of like the mandate that we get from God or from nature or
Yeah.
whatever. And so again, this programming that's coming from outside of that is trying to disrupt the natural inclinations, the natural programming that we already come down packaged with. And so I think that's why it resonates with so many people because
Yeah.
it feels natural. It's like, oh yeah, it's almost like reminding you of what you actually have always felt. And you forget
Yeah.
that with the confusion and with the deception and the manipulation that's going on right now in society. And so I think it is really refreshing. I mean, just having this conversation with you is refreshing because I have so many conversations on social media that aren't like this. It's just, uh, frustration and anger and resistance to, people just regurgitating what somebody told them to think and feel. And it doesn't feel like you're actually getting to the actual heart of where people are at. I think people's
Yeah.
hearts are in our traditional roles. That's why you
Yeah.
see 84% of women not wanting to be in the workforce anymore. When I was looking to get married again, first of all, I wasn't looking to get married again. I was kind of jaded by everything that's going on in society. And I got out of a first marriage that was just really, really rough. And I didn't think I would ever want to get married, but part of the reason why I didn't think I'd ever want to get married is because, like so many guys, other men out there that feel the same way, I just didn't feel like there were a lot of traditional women left, and I'm a traditional guy. I believe in traditional roles. when I met my wife now, uh, she just kept, I kept trying to tell myself I wasn't interested in having a serious relationship again. I was like, I had to keep telling myself that, reminding myself, because she was just so cool and she was so traditional and everything she was saying. I was like, this girl is amazing, but I don't want to get married again. This can't be real. I kept looking for when the world
Where's the fault?
deprogrammed.
Yeah.
Yeah, where's the feminists going to start coming out, and then
Yeah.
when am I going to start hearing all this bull crap like this going to start? And it never did. And so eventually I just got to a point where I was like, this is the coolest person I've ever met for a lot of reasons. She's incredible. She's been intensely successful in business, and she's done door-to-door sales as well. She was the number one female rep out of a company of 3,000 reps. I mean, she's just amazing, incredible. But she wanted to have a family. She wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, and that was really, really important to me. One of the things I hear women say on social media a lot that's just absolutely nonsense is they will say, uh, men, or they will say men are intimidated by powerful women, and
Mm,
I don't think that's actually true at all. I think we actually value powerful women, but we value powerful women in their natural roles. Like, I want
yeah.
my wife to be a powerful woman. I want her to be the best version of herself, but I'm not looking for another breadwinner. I'm not looking for
Yeah.
a woman to be dominant. And I think a lot of times women think that they can be, um, that what a lot of women interpret as being a powerful woman is actually being a really nasty person, like mean, difficult to work with, uncompromising, unyielding, unaccountable, and just whatever I say goes. I'm powerful, hear me, and that's the end of the story. And that's not a strong person. That's a weak person. A strong person knows how to compromise. A strong person is secure in who they are and knows how to have conversations that are uncomfortable. A strong person is somebody that's trying to build up other people around them. And so
Yeah.
I don't think men are intimidated by strong women. I think men just don't like nasty women. And I think a lot of women think
Yeah.
that they're being powerful by being difficult, and it's not what we're looking for.
Yeah, I've heard that so many times though as well, that people kept on telling me as well when I was going this whole career path that, well, men are obviously intimidated by you, but that was a message coming from both men and women. And for a while I thought, oh, this sucks really a lot, because obviously that's not what I wanted to achieve. And then on the other hand, at some point I got to the conclusion it might actually, like you just said, it might actually not be that. And I was realizing that obviously when you're just working and when your sole focus is work and achieving something in your career, then the men that I would actually want to be with, who's more traditionally minded and wants a family, etc., doesn't even see that in me. He wouldn't even see me as like someone who would take care of the family or like provides a nice meal or like raises children, educates children, etc. So like all of these things this man wouldn't see in me, so why would I be of interest? And I think that's something that a lot of people don't want to look at, and I think there's something in there that probably is quite true, because if you don't represent the person at all, and it's often if you're like very high up in your career path and you're working like crazy, then obviously your energy and like how you're feeling and everything is so skewed so that you don't even radiate any femininity anymore, and that's obviously not attractive.
Yeah, not at all. And men, it's again, maybe there's some men that are intimidated. I just don't
Yeah.
run into any of them, so I don't know that to be true. It's not that they're intimidated; it's that they're just not interested. Right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
exactly what you're saying. It's like what men want traditionally is what I wanted was connection and peace. That's what I
Yeah.
want with my woman. I want to be able to connect with her, and I want a woman that can give me peace. Because as a man, you go into the world, and me in business, in some cases it's a bloodbath. It's really difficult. I mean, every single day I come home and it's hard to wind down because you just got all the stresses from the day,
Yeah.
uh, and you got all the stresses of the next day, and you got all this stuff on your mind. With my wife now, when I would come home, she would just first, she turned my house into a home. It was just a place of peace where I would come home,
Yeah.
and she would have a nice cooked meal for me, and she would greet me with a smile, and she was in her energy. She wasn't stressed out from the day. She wasn't in the
Yeah.
same shoes as me, getting her ass kicked going into the corporate world, trying to work her way up the ladder and trying to compete and putting in long hours to just get a paycheck. She was allowed to be in her energy where she could create. And I think women are creators. You give them something, and they turn it, when they're
Yeah.
in their feminine energy, they turn it into something beautiful. I gave my wife a house. She turned it into a home. I couldn't do that. She's doing things that I can't do. That's what I'm interested in. We make children. She raises these children, and she's teaching them. And I can't do that when I'm away at work. So she fills in these places that are meaningful for me. So it's not that I think women are bad because they want to have careers. I don't think, I mean, if you want to go out and work, you should do whatever you want to do with your life.
Yeah.
I'm not telling women what to do. I do tell women what men are interested in, and then usually what happens is women tell me I'm wrong. And I love how that's just like so cliche, where like a guy talks his truth and talks about what he wants, and then there's some woman telling him, "No, you're wrong. That's not what you want. You're just intimidated," or something like that. And especially when I'm in conversations on my social media with other men, we're sitting around the campfire and we're talking about our issues and what we like and what we want,
Yeah.
and to have women come in and tell us we're wrong, it's just I just scratch my head about how the lack of self-awareness there, just like,
Yeah.
and the complete hypocrisy.
It wasn't just a couple of men who just said that and talked about it because they felt it. No. It must be completely wrong. And a woman
Exactly.
probably knows better.
Exactly. I think there's a lot of that goes on, and obviously it's not
Yeah.
healthy for anybody. It's like
No.
we should all listen to each other.
Yeah.
Men need to listen better to women, and women need to listen better to men, and no one's role is more important. It's like when we have the right energy, when a man is in his masculine energy, and when a woman is in her feminine energy, everybody is happier. Like it's just feels right. The happiest marriages and relationships that I see are generally built around traditional values and traditional roles, and everybody in it is happier. It's not like this is
Yeah.
subverting women or keeping them down. It's like that's what women want. The majority of women want, I think, is to be able to be safe in their feminine
Yeah.
energy. And as a man, that's my job. Like I need to protect my wife and make sure she is feeling safe, and she's feeling protected, and she's feeling cared about, and she's feeling like I'm providing well for her. Like that's my role. I take pride in that. It's something that gives me a great deal of value. Um, and so again, when you find women that are like, I don't need a man to do those things for me, then I'm like, what's the point of us even being in a serious relationship? You get a lot of these dominant women, and maybe what they're saying is that for dominant women, I think they predominantly hang out with less dominant men that they don't find attractive. And so when they run into men that are more competent, men that are more masculine, uh, because those guys aren't interested in them, then they just become critical of them and attack masculinity and say masculinity is bad. But the irony is that they really want a masculine man deep down inside. You can see
Yeah.
this. Like I run into these women that say all kinds of things about feminism and how that's great, and the make women better than men in the workforce or whatever else. And then when you really get down to it, they're not really that interested in that.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think most women as well, like if you really would get down to what are you truly feeling about this and what are you just not saying because this is what you are thinking you are supposed to say and this is why you're following that. But if you really get down to it, this is what you actually want and you would actually really like to be safe because this is just in your biological nature, and the longer you're trying to suppress that, the more issues you will have. And it's just fact. And I think we cannot really escape that. So there's just our biology in that. And we can't be like, well, I don't want this anymore. I mean, yeah, people are doing this right now. But I think it's super important to, yeah, for us to be healthy and to live a life that where we are thriving in, to live in that way that serves us and helps us, and it helps both sides. So it's like it's a win-win situation. Just go for it. But I do feel like, and this maybe kind of gets us into the next question that I had written down for our conversation, and I do think there's truly a struggle right now, and I see this in a lot of people around me, especially in my age groups. I'm 28, so like all the people around me in a way, especially all the women, but also a lot of men. There's a true problem with the dating culture and the whole system that is set up in order to find each other and to get married eventually. I think we're truly lacking direction, and also, I guess, I don't know what it is, but it seems to be almost impossible to find your person. It at least feels like that. It feels like the whole world is, on the one hand, we are occupied with ourselves and everyone is their main character, and so we just don't care. Or on the other hand, there's this whole, okay, we just don't know anymore how to connect with each other, and how a man talks to a woman and a woman talks to a man, and like, how do we do all of that? I don't know if you have any advice on that. Like, what are the things that you're talking about to men in particular, and maybe that also resonates with women as well? Yeah, what are the things that you're thinking
So
about
you're
when it
at
comes
what?
to dating, relationships, all of that? Like, how do we do that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I don't know that I've got like a silver bullet answer for that because it's
No.
pretty complex and there's a lot
Yeah.
of layers to it. But again, I'll go back to what I said earlier. The first step is always, as I tell men this all the time, it starts with you. Again, you attract what you are, not what you want. And
Yeah.
so if you want to have an amazing woman in your life, then you have to be an amazing man. And I
Yeah.
think what you have is a lot of people that aren't, they're not, because of selfishness, because of this messaging, just do what you want, what makes you happy, which most people are going to translate as just do what's easy, right? Like, I'm going to
Yeah.
cut corners, I'm going to take the easy path because in the short term that gives me some sense of relief, and maybe they equate that for happiness. Real happiness comes from fulfillment, and fulfillment comes from overcoming, particularly overcoming yourself, the things inside of you that you want to change and develop and get better at. That's where people are really happy. And anybody that's in a position of progressing and leveling up, I don't know any of them that are on antidepressants. I don't know anybody that's depressed that's in a place where they're leveling themselves up and getting better at who they are. The people that are most unhappy to me are the people that are stuck, and they're the people that are picking the easy road. And you have this real, I can't really explain it as well as I'd like to without drawing it out, but uh, you have this graph where when you start to make decisions that are beneficial to you, it requires a lot of work. It requires a lot of sacrifice. It requires grit and the ability to
Yeah.
keep failing and getting up and keep going. And there's initially zero reward for that. At least that's perceptible. You're
Yeah.
just doing this because you know you want to get to a better place, and you just have to work through a period of time of making decisions that are the responsible decisions for your life that don't have an immediate benefit for it. So this is where I think a lot of people, they'll start on that path. They'll see, oh, I could be better. I should be better. They'll know that. They'll hear a podcast like this, or they'll
Yeah.
read a book, or they'll listen to something and like, I got to go level up. But because there's not an immediate return on that, they give up. Whereas when you start to take the easy path, the reality is you start to get immediate senses of relief. It feels comfortable to like stay home and play video games. It's comfortable to just kind of do what you want when you feel like
Yeah.
doing it. And you don't see what the long-term consequences of either of those paths are until you get down that path a ways. If you continue to make the choices that are the easy choices, it'll feel great at first. You'll get an immediate reward on that. But you're going to get to this breaking point where you start to drop off really, really quick, and your life gets really, really miserable, really, really fast. And the opposite is true for guys, women as well. When you're leveling up, you're putting in that work, you're taking the hits, you start to hit this breaking point where the acceleration becomes intense, where your life just starts getting better and better and better and better. It's easier to like, again, just to show this on a graph of how this works. But so that's the
I'm
first thing. Like, if
envisioning it.
you can see it a little bit, I hope. I'm trying to articulate it as well as I can. But that's that's the first thing that I tell men is just, again, take ownership for your life. If you want your life to be better, it starts with you. You can't wait for somebody to come save you. You can't wait to find the perfect woman that's going to make your life all of a sudden meaningful. You have to be the type of guy that a good woman is going to want to be attracted to. And I think more and more people are waking up to this, which is encouraging, but I still think it's smaller in number than the
Yeah.
people that are just kind of taking the easy way out, the kind of the hedonistic lifestyle, and just do whatever feels right in the moment. But if you start to level up out of that, you're going to naturally start connecting with people that are doing the same thing. And that's going to
Yeah.
involve women as well. So I think that's the first step, is to say, like, okay, I'm going to take accountability for my life. I'm going to get better. I'm going to go into the dating world being the best version of myself. And then the second step is just to absolutely know what your worth is, and to know exactly what you want. um, you have to really dial in those things to say, like, what is it that I'm trying to get out of life, and then I'm going to start working towards that. So if you want to date good women, then you have to put yourself in a position to be able to be a good person, and then you're going to find these relationships that start to be meaningful to you, and they're
Yeah.
going to start to make sense.
Yeah, I think that there is something that's almost always a bit of a misconception out there, that people think like, I mean, they're almost always talking about two halves becoming one kind of, but it's truly like two like complete people who, yeah, have done their work, put in their work, and try to, I don't know, level up in their life, be a good person, and do the things that, yeah, fulfill them to some extent, serve in community, or doing something that, I don't know, challenges you. I think that there needs to be, humans need to grow. I think that's just in our nature. So we need to, for men and women alike, we need to do things that challenge us. And I see that for personally, I experienced that in my life a lot with just like the changes of moving to another country. I mean, this I'm saying this like a small thing, but like these things, they make you into a different human, and that's amazing. It like develops you, it grows you, and it makes you into a whole and well-rounded person that has like a healthier mindset. And then that's also a really good groundwork for when you want to have children and all of those things, to just be more well-rounded, to be able to actually serve them better as well. So I think there's such an importance in that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's the primary job that you have is to just
Yeah.
make your primary responsibility is to make who you are better. Everything
Yeah.
else is secondary to that. And when you recognize that your goal in life is not to achieve all these external things, including marriage, that's not your goal in life. Your goal in life is to be the best version of yourself, and that includes being good to people. That includes being compassionate. I'm not talking about being selfish. I'm talking about being powerful. From a religious point of view, God, you can only serve God to the extent that you have the abilities to serve God.
Yeah.
So you're not useful in God's hands if you're not a useful person. And so developing yourself and making yourself better is the purpose, is the primary focus. Everything else is secondary to that. And when that becomes your focus, everything else comes in its proper place and proper time. So like, and I talk to guys about this all the time. Guys will say all the time, I want to be rich, or I want to be physically fit, or I want to be famous, or I want to have a very happy marriage. That's what I want, right? The
Yeah.
problem is if that becomes your primary focus, you get further and further away from that. So I know a lot of guys that money becomes their primary focus over everything else. They never have enough money. They're never satisfied. They never get to a place where it's enough. It's constantly like this place
Yeah.
of scarcity for them. They're not happy as they get more money, as they get more wealth. It doesn't make them happier. In fact, in a lot of ways, it just makes them crave more and more wealth. With
Yeah.
relationships, that's equally true. If you are so focused on like, I need a relationship to fulfill me, I need a relationship to make me happy, what happens so often is that you're so desperate to get into that relationship because you think that's what's going to make you happy, that you miss all of the red flags, all of the red flags about yourself, all the red flags about this other person. And you're meeting somebody else that's in that same
Yeah.
place of scarcity. And now you have these two kind of toxic mindsets coming together into a toxic relationship, which is going to be, kind of a poison pill right from the beginning. If you want to be in a happy relationship, you first have to be happy with yourself. Like, I'm
Yeah.
glad just to be myself, be by myself. And that was the thing when I got out of my first marriage that I learned how to just be really happy by myself. And that was part of the reason why I didn't want to get remarried. I was like, dude, I'm so happy right now just being
Yeah.
single. I got 3 kids. I've got a great job. I'm learning a lot. I'm developing. I don't want to mess that up again. But I found somebody else that was equally happy just being themselves. And now you
Yeah.
find 2 people healthy and strong and happy. And we just end up meeting together. And you're like, you're not filling some gap that I'm missing. She's not filling that for me, and I'm not filling that for her. Instead, you're just this incredible person now that I can share this journey with. And we're both happy with who we are. And now we're both happy to be together. And it just sets up, I think, for the best chance of having happiness in a marriage is when you stop looking for a marriage as your primary purpose. That's a secondary
Yeah.
side quest. Your primary purpose is to just get better, be the best person you can be, put in the work to do that, get more self-aware, broaden your the way of thinking so that you're not just in these little narrow echo chambers, but you can see things more broadly and you can experience things. I've heard somebody say this once. I was listening to this, that scientifically the way that they measure happiness, like if they're saying, hey, this produces happiness in a group of people, that happiness is actually equal to openness. Like that's how they
Mm.
measure happiness, because happiness is such a subjective term in our society. But to take happiness and equate that to openness made so much sense to me when I heard that. And now I recognize that to be really true in my life. Like the more open I am to things, the more open I am
Yeah.
to different thoughts, different ways of life, the more I'm willing to experience life on its terms instead of trying to force everything to fit my terms, the happier, more fulfilled I get. And then you just find more and more people on that same journey with you. And it's just really, really awesome
Yeah.
experience.
I mean, there is a thing in saying yes to things, actually. So, I mean, it's, I know, like, some years ago, I feel like that was like a whole thing on social media as well. Like, say yes to whatever. But it truly, like, when you go through a normal week and you get a dinner party invitation, or like, let's picnic in the park, or let's go to whatever, like, in Lisbon, we just had fiestas where like they do like festivities, whatever. But just saying yes to things and being with people, being in community, surrounding yourself, or getting yourself into situations where you've not been in before. I think that is like something so healthy and just so amazingly character developing. And that's also, yeah, that also creates a certain fulfillment, because you need that in order to, yeah, like you just said, to not walk around empty in order to like find your missing piece, which you don't want to walk through life like that. And it's truly, I've experienced that before, not that I've followed through, but I've noticed that within myself, that I had opportunities of men approaching me, wanting to date, etc. And I knew that I could say yes because it would be easy, but I know that this is not my person, and for several different kind of reasons. And still, it would be easy, right? You could just say yes and let it like roll on and have what you want from, like, at least in the package, that okay, you would be married, you would probably get children, you would probably have a nice home, etc. But it's not exactly the thing that would fulfill you fully, because it's not your person point. And I think that is something that we need to be so careful about, because when we get into that, especially right now where it seems to be such a struggle to find your person and to like navigate that whole dating scene, it's still so important to be especially aware of that, to not make the mistake to be with someone just because, but really focusing on, okay, am I like fulfilled myself? And then can I go from there so that I can be the best version of myself and like find a partner who's that as well. I think that is
Uh,
super, super important.
that strikes a chord with me because that's essentially what I did in my first marriage. Like the big mistake in the first marriage that I got into is I was getting older. I was 30, and I was like, dude, I just want to have a family. Like, and I just want to have a relationship. I was so sick of dating, it just gets old
Yeah.
and exhausting. At first, it's kind of fun, the chase and the hunt and the
Well, I am
excitement of
there.
it. Yeah.
I'm
Are you
obviously there.
exhausted?
Yeah.
Yeah, are you exhausted? It's like exhausting. And so I wasn't patient enough, right? And I didn't
Yeah.
understand this. And so I ended up marrying somebody that I wasn't compatible with, and I didn't even recognize it because I was
Yeah.
just like, okay, I guess I'm just going to find somebody that kind of hits the check boxes, and we'll get
Yeah.
into this relationship and have family, and you just work your way through it. That's just kind of kind of the mentality that I had. And we
Yeah.
were so not compatible together that it just started off bad from the very beginning. And 8.5 years later, we finally got a divorce. And I have nothing negative to say about her. She's a wonderful woman in a lot of ways. We were not good together. She's
Yeah,
a
that's the
phenomenal
thing.
mother. We're just terrible together. And I don't regret anything. I mean, that 8.5 years taught me so
Yeah.
much. I learned so much about myself. And I have three beautiful kids that the sun rises and sets on them. Like, I couldn't be more grateful for that experience in hindsight. But it's not something that everybody has to take that same path. If you
Yeah.
can learn these types of principles and say, hey, I'm just going to be patient. I don't know when that
Yeah.
right person is going to come into my life, but I know that if I continue to do the right things by myself, that it will happen. And when it happens, it'll happen in such a healthy way. The
Yeah.
second marriage I'm in right now, it's crazy to say it, but it's just easy. It's so
Yeah.
easy and it's so fun and it's beautiful and it's incredible. And it's like, it's given me a whole level of joy and happiness I wouldn't have on my own. Not that I needed that.
Yeah.
I didn't need it because I was happy where I was at, but it's just compounded the happiness that I already had in my own life. But I didn't meet her until I was 40, and she
Yeah.
was 29. The interesting thing is we talk about this all the time. It's like when I was finally ready to get married, like I was kind of thinking like that when I was around your age. I was like
Yeah.
27, 28. I was like, okay, I got to start getting more serious about this because I don't want this ship to sail without me. I was happy being single. Like I was super happy being single, but I was like, I got to start getting myself in this. Like I gotta get ready to settle down if I want to have a family. We laugh about it because we're so compatible together. But she would have been 17 when I was finally
Yeah.
ready to get married. So there's no shot that I would have even met her. She still
Yeah.
needed to level up. She still needed to develop herself,
Yeah.
and I needed to level up, and I needed to develop myself. And now for both of us, she was She was a little bit older. I mean, she was 29. She was 29 when we got married, and I was 40.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of where you're at your age at 28. And I was 40 way down the road, when I finally
Yeah.
found my person. But you don't want to shortchange that by looking for the
Yeah.
easy solution up front, like you're saying, just saying yes to somebody because
Yeah.
they somehow check the boxes. Like,
Yeah, that's the thing. You don't want to have that. You don't want to have someone who just like looks nice on paper and has all the things that one would be looking for, kind of. But you, I think the factor that like needs to factor in, you just need to feel the peace. Like you need to be at peace with that person and with yourself, and just there's just that inner feeling of, okay, this is right, and that just needs to be there, and otherwise you're just making a huge mistake.
I think so.
Or
I think you're
or
spot
I mean
on.
or I mean you maybe like make only a half of a mistake because you will learn something on your journey, but you can also maybe like if you have the chance you can skip it.
Well, and I think, not to wax too religious on this, I don't know what angles you want to take on this, but to me, that's where when we talk about Christ, we talk about his atonement for us. A lot of times we just get fixated on the sin part of it, like Christ forgives me of my sins, right? I can be
Mm,
forgiven through my sins. But I think the atonement, that sacrifice Christ made, goes way beyond that. I think it's this force that counteracts entropy. It's this force that we don't know how to define in scientific terms, but there's this life-giving force to everything. So that the beautiful
yeah.
thing about life is no matter what you've done with your life up to this point, good or bad, through through Christ, through Jesus, nothing is wasted. Like
Yeah.
every experience you have becomes beneficial to you. So my experience from my previous marriage wasn't
Yeah.
wasted. It wasn't 8
No.
years of being wasted. It was this incredible experience to learn so much and to be more prepared so that I was ready for a much healthier relationship when I
Yeah.
came out of it. And so I think, yeah, don't get discouraged if your life's not where you want it to be.
No.
Just put in the work, keep putting one foot in front of the other, and be patient. And don't
Yeah.
let yourself get stressed about the things that you don't have. They will come. You'll have everything you want in life if you're operating from a place of abundance and a place of constant self-improvement where you're constantly trying to make yourself a better person.
Yeah, I think patience is a really good word, and yeah, I think that is something so important to always have in mind, that everything can be used for good and nothing is wasted. I think these are like two key factors to live by, really. So really beautiful. There's one last question that I ask everyone on here, and it's, if there's one thing that you feel like you wish more humans would know about, something that touches you deeply, or you just feel like everyone should know this, what is that? Or is there something?
The one thing that everybody should know, um, the one thing that I think everybody should know is that you have a purpose for your life. And when you can find out what that purpose is when life really begins to start for you. Otherwise, I feel like you're just kind of going through the motions. And I think a lot of people are doing that. They're in this sort of zombie state of mind where they're just kind of doing what they're told. They're doing what the church told them to do. They're doing what their family told them to do. They're doing what society tells them to do. And they never find out who they really are. I think
Yeah,
that's probably the biggest journey in life is self-discovery, like just finding out who you are, what really
yeah,
like lights your world on fire, and then pursuing that
yeah,
just incessantly, like the things that make you happy, that give you high energy, that make you vibrant. That takes a lot of work. It's not like you just sit down in an afternoon and be like, what is it that I want out of life? I mean, it takes for a lot of us years. It's taken me decades to really start to dial into who I am and what is it that I really want out of life. But that's what I would tell everybody is the journey of life is really the journey of self-discovery. It's not acquiring things. It's not external validations. It's really finding out who you are. And for me, that is very much connected with my relationship with God. For me, God, I am a Christian. I'm not as dogmatic as most Christians are. I I think that for me though, Christ, God, represents the truth. So to make it universally applicable to all people, I think it's
yeah,
the truth. And none of us arrive at the truth. We peel back layers of it and we experience more and more truth as we go further and further down. But there's never a point where you arrive. And that's one of the problems I
yeah,
have with religion is that people, I've already arrived. I already know it. I know what's going on. This is what's up. I'm like, no, you haven't. Like there's this Mount Everest to climb and you're on this
yeah,
anthill and you think you've got it figured out because somebody
yeah,
told you this is what this means. It's like, no, it's this entire process of peeling back the layers of
yeah,
self-deception, peeling back the layers of dishonesty within yourself to see who you really are. And for me, that's me in my relationship to the truth or my relationship to God. That's what
yeah.
I wish everybody knew.
Yeah. Isn't it also like the more we know, the less we know? Like it just opens
Yeah,
more doors and just yeah. So I definitely agree with that. No,
there's
that's
no
so
arriving.
yeah. That is so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you so much for being on here. As like one of the last things, where can people find you if they feel like, okay, I didn't get enough. I just want to hear more.
They probably feel like they got enough if they even made it to the end of this. But no,
Yeah.
they could come find me on social media. Adam Allred Official is the handle, and uh, yeah, good luck with the content.
No, I think it's great. So I'm endorsing it.
Thank
Amazing.
you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, it was a pleasure talking to you. I really had so much fun. And I mean, it is always just so amazing to talk to people you align, like your views align with, and getting that message that we, yeah, have in our heart out there is just incredible. So really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Likewise, the pleasure was mine. Thank you, Karina.